Hey Foot Geeks fans, today we want to talk about how to narrow a shoe. Now there's a lot of different ways of tightening a shoe, and that's something that we want to discuss in today's video, but let's go into the workshop so you see how it's done. All right, so now we're in the workshop and we want to show you how to narrow your shoes. Obviously, some of these things you can probably do from home. Some of these you will have to maybe go see a shoe repair shop to be able to do that for you. Just because you may not have a patch at home, that's not necessarily something that you'll invest in. But it doesn't take a lot of money and doesn't take a lot of time for a shoe repair shop to potentially fix that for you. So, okay, one thing when it comes to tightening shoes is number one, we like to tighten from the front as opposed to from the back. So obviously you can do heel grips that you can put into the back of the shoe, and then that may help reduce some of the movement off the foot up and down in the shoe, but it also has a tendency to then push you forward, and I don't necessarily like putting heel grips into shoes because they tend to push you forward into the front of the shoe, and then it takes away the space that you may need for your toes to be comfortable. So what we like to do is usually use a piece of cork or other material, and then obviously cut it to shape. So we would take the insole from the footwear, and we would trace the insole. I mean, I try to give it as much as possible. Trace the insole kind of around there with a pen or whatever you have, and then take a pair of scissors to trim it. And as you trim this insole, obviously then we're shaping it to the insole off the shoe, and that's going to be then would go under the shoe. You'd put it inside the shoe first. Now one of the things I usually like to do is bevel the edge with a grinder. So if you don't have a grinder, sometimes you can skive it with just a knife, just to kind of take some of the edge off so you don't feel it so much under the foot. Or if you use, for example, an old insole that you have like this, you could potentially just kind of scrape away at the edge to get that to fit properly. And the old insole, would be a potential option for you to tighten up the shoe as well, instead of obviously a cork tab that you may not have handy at home. But other than that, there may be other materials you can purchase and different densities that you could also use as the tool to tighten the front of the shoe. And what that does, it basically tightens this area right here, reduces the space in here so the foot doesn't slide forward past this area, which is the vamp. And that obviously is important to keep the foot in the back of the shoe. Another way to do this is to use a tongue pad. So this is basically a little bit of a cotton piece. You can probably pick that up online, or purchases at a local shoe store. And then what that does, it just basically goes into the tongue of the footwear like this. And then as you can see right here, it provides some additional thickening of the tongue to again help keep the foot back. It just tightens up this area here. You can place it sometimes even a little bit further down into the shoe if you want to tighten it up around the front of the foot, or you can obviously put it on the top of the foot right here. This is also a great way to pad the foot to prevent it from feeling too pressured on the top. Another way to tighten the shoe would be to use a heel cushion, or just a kind of a little bit of heel lift. As you can see, it's got a little bit of a raise. I would usually put that underneath the sole of the shoe, so you'd fit it in there, and then as you put it in there, you put the other insole on top. Now one of the downsides is that it does sometimes raise you up too high, so you may not feel supported around the ankle. So that's kind of a last resort, is to use a kind of a heel raise to try to bring your foot up against the top of the shoe to prevent you from moving around too much. Another way you can do this is use a full length insole. So you could technically use an insole like this, or if you have some old insoles kicking around, usually what I recommend with these insoles, to make sure that they kind of flat underneath any insoles that are in the shoe. Trim away the edges, so go and trim away this edge to prevent it from kind of shifting your upper insole in weird positions. And then once you've done that, discard the rest, and then obviously trim it to fit the insole of the shoe. Put it in first, put this on top, and then that way you have a tighter fitting shoe as well. So that's just kind of tightening the entire shoe, lifting you up in the heel a little bit, maybe not quite as much as a heel cushion like this, but it will definitely help prevent you from sliding around in the shoe too much. The other way you can do this is, like, let's say sometimes with sandals like this one, which has a D-ring closure, you know, there's a limit as to how far you can tighten this, right? So you kind of this is about as tight as you can go. Once you start going over, you know, obviously the strap gets too long and it doesn't necessarily hold anywhere anymore. So one of the things that I see often is that the client is sliding forward because this strap is not tight against the foot. So one of the things you can do here, for example, this can be loosened on the edge right here by a shoe repair shop. They can then restitch it in a shorter form, so they can basically, you know, make that strap a little bit shorter. So let's say you need it about there, right? You can shorten the strap on the one side to then allow it to, you know, be tighter on your foot, and it's going to really help keep your foot in position. So that's one thing to do with a sandal like this. It has a D-ring closure. You know, obviously the front here is easy to adjust because that, you know, it can go quite far and it's going to keep you in place. But with these ones here, there are sometimes limitations as to how tight you can make them, and that's a great way to make sure that your foot has proper contact in here to keep it in the back of the sandal properly, keep you from sliding forward. And D-ring closure, I would adjust like that. Now in some shoes you can see that as well. So if you have kind of a loose strap on the top that's not holding your foot properly, have that strap adjusted and you're going to get a tighter fit. That's going to really help reduce movement forward off your foot, and then therefore reduce you know, potential slipping in your shoes. And the last thing that we're going to cover now is the lace lock technique, but we're gonna run into the showroom for that so we can show you how to do the lace lock technique. Now that does work only on certain shoes. Some shoes you can technically put extra holes in there to allow you to be able to use that technique, but we'll show you how to use the lace lock technique next. And there we are. Okay, so lastly I want to demonstrate the lace lock technique here, which is a way to tighten up the heel in the shoe a little bit better just by changing how you lace up the shoes. So obviously with most running shoes and even a lot of other brands, there's going to be a couple of holes at the top, and you can see one of the holes, you know, the lace is already coming through, so you've got 1-2 holes right here. And what you have to do when you do the lace lock technique is you come through that hole, okay? And then as you come through that hole here, it's just the same as you do any other shoe. Instead of you lacing up the shoe, what you want to do is you want to have the lace return through the hole at the back. So you create a little loop right here, and then some people call it a bunny ear, so whatever you want to call that. You do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so if you can see that here. And then once you have those 2 bunny ears on either side, or those little loops there, what you do, instead of, you know, lacing up the shoe at this point, you go through that loop with your lace, okay? And then you pull it tight, and you can cinch it down by doing this. And that helps to bring in the shoe around the ankle more securely. It cinches the heel down into the footwear a little bit more because it's pushing onto the instep, and then therefore pushes in the heel into the back of the shoe more substantially. And then now obviously you go and lace up your shoe like you normally would. And there you have it. That's the lace lock technique. Now if you have any questions regarding narrowing a shoe, or there's anything else that you might think of on how to narrow a shoe, please post those comments and questions below. And if you haven't subscribed to us yet on YouTube, do so right over there. Have an awesome day.